Hey everybody! Well, this is Mrs. Somick and just trying to get a little more creative. I hope you enjoy my bit emoji I added to our presentation today. So for today's lesson, you are going to be learning more about the branches of government. So before we get started, make sure you have a piece of paper, a pencil, something that you can use to make a tree map with me today. If you need to go grab those materials, just pause the video and come join me when you're ready. All right, friends, if you are ready to go, let's get started about the branches of government. All right, so with the branches of government here, we already know from the Constitution that was now created for our brand new nation here. There were a lot of compromises that had to be made. We learned that in our last lesson. Now, part of what the Constitution did is it divided up here the powers of our government by three separate branches. And notice that these branches here, they're all on the same level together. They just have different responsibilities. So while I'm reading, I just want you to take this in, and I'll tell you when you need to stop and take some notes with me, okay? So follow along as I'm reading, please. When the delegates of the Constitutional Convention wrote the Constitution, they wanted to make sure they separated the powers of the national government. They did not want any one person or group to have more power than another. They were afraid if one group had more power, the country would be under their control, which would be similar to having a king again. Because of this, the framers created three branches to share the powers equally: the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. And you can see here that on my little picture over here, the three separate branches. And I think that's really important here that they state that they wanted it to be separated because they didn't want one person or one group of people to have more control, because they were concerned about this kind of being like having a king all over again. And that's what they had just broken away from. All right. Now, as you can see from my little emojis here, I need you to get out your tree map. We're going to make a tree map. On your piece of paper, I want you to have the width of your paper going here. And at the top, just put down three branches of government up at the very top. Now, once you have that written, you're going to have three separate arms coming out. And if you want to shorten this and just put L for legislative, E for executive, and J for judicial, that is totally fine. But go ahead and pause the video if you need to write out the different branches that we have for our three branches of government. And when you're ready, go ahead and press play to continue on with the video. All right. Well, let's get started here. We're going to start off first learning a little bit more about this legislative branch. And I'm going to help you. We're going to find our text evidence to figure out what I need to write under each branch as we go. All right, let's get going. Okay, so my legislative branch, you can see over here the picture. I have our Capitol building because this is where our legislators actually meet in Washington, D.C. here. So after I read, we need to stop and check our understanding and try to figure out what are we going to add on our tree map for our legislative branch. Okay, let's listen carefully. Article 1 of the Constitution establishes the legislative branch. When the delegates met at the Constitutional Convention, they had a great debate over how many representatives would come from each state. After the Great Compromise, it was decided that the legislative branch, called Congress, could have two houses. The first house was called the House of Representatives and is based on the population of the states. The representatives serve for 2 years, and then they can be reelected or a new representative may be elected. There is no limit to the number of terms a representative can serve. One of the jobs that only the House of Representatives can do is to write a bill that makes people pay taxes. To be in the House of Representatives, a person must be at least 25 years old, have lived in the United States for the last 7 years, and live in the state they represent. The second house is called the Senate. Each state has 2 representatives in this house. This means that there is a total of 100 senators. The Senate also has jobs that only it can do. These jobs include approving or vetoing treaties the president writes or decisions the president makes about who should be government officials, like cabinet members, Supreme Court justices, and ambassadors. Senators must be at least 30 years old, have lived in the USA for the past 9 years, and live in the state they represent. Senators serve a 6-year term and can be reelected after their term is over, or the citizens may choose a new senator. There is no limit to the number of terms senators can serve. Together, the legislative branch makes laws. They also approve the making of money and decide how much money the government can spend. Congress controls trade between the states and other countries and can declare war on other countries. Congress also has the power to approve decisions made by the executive branch. If government officials break the law, Congress has the power to remove them from their position. All right, so here's the big question. What from all this information do you think would be really important to add to our tree map for the legislative branch? Well, I'm going to come over here and grab my highlighter here. I know one of the biggest things that we have on here is that we have that this branch, the legislative branch, is called Congress, and it could have 2 houses. Okay, that's important that we know that it is Congress that is a part of the legislative branch. So let's write that down. Okay, we know that the first house was called the House of Representatives, and the second house is called the Senate. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second. So make big bullets here. We're listing that information underneath the legislative branch. It is called Congress. The first house is called the House of Representatives. You can just put House of Reps. The second house is called the Senate. Please pause my video if you need more time. Okay, that's who makes up that branch, but what do they do? What do they do? Look at paragraph 3. Legislative branch, they make laws, right? They approve the making of money and how much money the government can spend. So making laws, approving the money, and deciding how much the government can spend. Those are all important jobs. Just kind of jot a couple notes down. All right. Something else we can say here is that also they control the trade between the states. My highlighting's getting a little crazy here. And other countries, and they can declare war. All right, so that was a lot of information. I'm going to pause for a second here. Big thing, it is the Congress. Again, the first house is the House of Reps. Second house is called the state. And some of the examples of the jobs you can write down is that they approve making of money and how to spend it. They control the trade between the states, and they can declare war on other countries. There's other things you can mention here too, that they can also make decisions about the executive branch if you want to include that on your tree map. Again, if you need more time, please go ahead and pause the video, but just have a few things. Basically, who and what do they do for that first branch? All right, you ready to go to the second branch? All right, let's go. I'm sure many of you recognize this here. This is a photograph of our White House because the next branch on our tree map is all about the executive branch. Okay, I'm gonna grab my highlighter. That's my pencil. Grab my highlighter because we're gonna highlight some important information for that middle branch here. Article 2 of the Constitution established the executive branch. The executive branch has one leader called the president. Some delegates wanted the president to serve for life, but many people did not like this idea because it sounded too much like having a king. It was decided that the president would serve a 4-year term. The president must be at least 35 years old, a natural-born citizen of the United States, and have lived in the U.S. for at least 14 years. The most a president can serve is 2 4-year terms. The president is the leader of our country and is the commander-in-chief of the military. The vice president is also in this branch. Is the president of the Senate and takes over if the president can no longer do the job. So we've got to know a little bit more about who's in this branch, let's figure out what they do. The executive branch carries out the laws or makes sure they're obeyed. When the legislative branch approves a bill, they send it to the president to be approved or to be vetoed or stopped. If the president agrees to the bill, he signs it. If he vetoes it, the bill has to go back to Congress and be approved by a 2/3 vote against the president's veto. The president cannot create a bill, but can make a suggestion to Congress, and a member can submit it on behalf of the president. The president is the American head of state. He meets with the leaders of other countries, creates treaties with them. The president also has the power to choose judges, ambassadors, and department leaders, but they have to be approved by Congress. This keeps the president from becoming too powerful. The president and vice president are the only government officials chosen by the entire country. Alrighty, so let's think about who. Who is basically the leader here of this branch? Let's go back here. Can you find it? Okay. The executive branch has one leader called the president. Okay. So there will be people in this branch, like his cabinet members and the vice president, that will help him, but he is the main leader of the executive branch. So that's our main who. But what do they do? The biggest thing, they carry out the laws or make sure they are obeyed. Okay. And the president here, remember, he can either, when the bill's sent, okay, he can either approve it or he can veto it, stop it. Okay. So approve or veto the bill. Good. Now there's many other jobs that my president carries out here, but that's kind of some of the big things. And as we wrap up our tree maps, I'll point those out to you so you can always add to it. So if you see other information you want to add to your tree map, that is fine. All right. Pause, please, if you need to have a second to fill in my executive branch to your tree map. If you're ready, let's keep on moving. All right, this is our final branch here, and this is a photograph, as we can see, of the Supreme Court building. And we're going to find out why I put this picture in here in just a second. Let me grab my highlighter. Final branch, the Judicial Branch. Article 3 of the Constitution establishes the Judicial Branch. The Judicial Branch is made up of the court system. This is the Supreme Court. It is the highest court in the United States. There are 9 justices in the Supreme Court. They are appointed by the president but must be approved by the Senate. Justices serve on the Supreme Court for the rest of their lives unless they resign or retire early. There are no requirements for becoming a justice. However, most have had training and education in law. Many have also worked in Congress, were governors, or worked in the president's cabinet. Now, that's talking about the who is made up of the Supreme Court justices. Now, what is it that they do? What are their responsibilities? The Judicial Branch makes sure that laws are fair and they follow the rules of the Constitution. When Congress creates new laws, the Judicial Branch makes sure the laws are constitutional and they cannot be passed. The Supreme Court also hears legal cases that make it through the court system to federal court. They also hear cases when federal laws are broken. They hear cases that challenge the Constitution. Since this is the highest court, their decision is final. Okay. Well, let's go back up to who's my who. Who is a part of my Judicial Branch? Can you find it? All right. Right here. It is made up of my Supreme Court. That's who makes up my Judicial Branch. What is the biggest thing that my Judicial Branch does? Look in paragraph 2. Can you find it? All right. My Judicial Branch, they make sure that laws are fair and that they follow the rules of the Constitution. Remember, the Constitution is that highest law, right? So they have to make sure that these laws follow our Constitution and that they're fair for everybody. That is one of their biggest roles here. All right, if you need more time, please pause me to add that final information for your final branch. All right.